We'll call the meeting to order for Wicomico County Council Legislative Session 2022-20 for September 20th, 2022. Those that like to stand and join us in the Lord's Prayer and Pledge of Allegiance, please do. Our Father,
art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. On earth as it is in heaven. And give us this day our daily bread. And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Get a motion from council to approve the legislative session minutes from September 6, 2022.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Any corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The minutes are approved. This time we have three proclamations before we begin. The first proclamation is to recognize National Suicide Prevention Month. I think we have Ms. Kimberly Christopher with the Life Crisis Center here. There she is. And Councilwoman Nicole Ackley will be presenting the proclamation at the podium there. If you have anybody that wants to take pictures during any of this, you can walk right up to the podium and take it. You don't have to worry about obstructing anyone's view.
Come on up. This proclamation is for National Suicide Prevention Month. Whereas suicide remains the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading death amongst individuals between the age of 10 and 34. Whereas over 90% of the individuals who die by suicide have been diagnosed in treatable mental health conditions, although often that condition is not recognized or treated. Whereas organizations such as the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention are dedicated to saving lives and bringing hope to those affected by suicide through education, advocacy, and resources for those who have lost someone to suicide or who struggle with it. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention urges that we recognize suicide as a preventable public health problem, address disparities in access to mental health care, promote awareness that suicide most often occurs when stressors exceeding a person's capacity to cope, and implement strategies to improve access to quality mental health, substance abuse, and suicide prevention and services. Now, therefore, the Wycomico County Council and the County Executive hereby designate September as National Suicide Prevention Month in Wycomico County. Yep. Do you want to say something?
Other than, of course, I speak on behalf of the Life Crisis Center, we would like to say thank you very much. We are glad that we can be a part of receiving this as well as providing a viable service to the community. We have seen an increase in suicide calls on our hotline, and it's good to know that we have the support of our community and we have trained professionals in our crisis center that can actually assess and help the many, many people that come from all over and help them cope and deal and provide them with effective resources in their community to help them with their mental health challenges. So again, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes.
We appreciate it.
Come in front of the podium.
Y'all want to get in front of it? Yeah, there you go. I would like to announce those recipients who are receiving the proclamations will need to return them. We're Indian givers all the time. Bill McCain is not here today, so he hasn't had a chance to sign it. So if you could return them to Ms. Hurley after the presentation, we'll make sure that you receive those once Bill signs them. The next proclamation we have is for the Local Management Board in recognition of 25 years of service. Ms. Jamie Riley, who has had 25 days of service, right, is here as our Director of the Local Management Board, doing a great job for us.
Good morning.
When I first got on the council, I don't know if I was drafted, but I got put on the local management board. I didn't have a clue what it was. And with the fine people that was on there, Dr. Whitehead, he came later, and Dr. Miles. Listening and learning, I learned a lot from those people and the people that was on the board, and learn what the board really does. And it does a lot in the community as far as for children and family services. And I commend the dedication of the board. I mean, they're dedicated, they're hard workers. I've never seen so many people work so hard, and I think they all got the heart in it. So I love working with you guys. I commend you on your work. And the new director, she come in, and she came right in and fit right in and kept it right on running smoothly, like she's been there forever. Proclamations. Whereas the local management board, also known as Wycomico Partnership for Family and Children, identifies priorities and target resources for our local community. And whereas the major focus of the local management board is to increase local authority to plan, implement, and monitor children and family services. And whereas the local management board serves as coordinator and collaborator for children and family services in Wycomico County, and brings together local agencies to empower local stakeholders in addressing the needs of setting priorities for the community. Now, therefore, the Wycomico County Council and the acting county executive hereby congratulate the local management board on 25 years of service to the community and recognize substantial contributions they have made providing services to families and children in Wycomico County done this 20th day of September 22nd, September 2022. Speak.
Well, thank you. In the last 25 days of my service, I am very fortunate, and Wycomico County is very fortunate to have the local management board and to have the support of the council and an amazing board that works as hard as our staff does. And we just appreciate this recognition. Thank you.
I'll take, you want your, we can. Thank you. Ms. Hurley, good morning. How are you? All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip one? Sorry. Sorry, Josh. Moving too fast. This is a proclamation to recognize World Rivers Day. And Jaron Parks, not here?
He was sick, so I don't know if there's anybody else from the Land Trust community.
Representative from the Lower Shore Land Trust anywhere? No? Okay.
Want to hold on to it or still read it?
Why don't you read it, Josh? Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be fine.
sure.
Yeah,
It's
great.
important.
Good idea.
Proclamation World Rivers Day. Whereas celebrated the fourth Sunday in September, World Rivers Day is a global event that started in 2005 in celebration of the world's waterways. And whereas this day of awareness highlights many of the values of our rivers and strives to increase public awareness and encourages improved stewardship on all the rivers of the world. And whereas, among other benefits, rivers provide food and nutrition, support for transport of goods, provide recreation and support needed of habitat and important flora and fauna. And whereas World Rivers Day was launched by the United Nations in 2005 and now spans across more than 70 countries. Therefore, the Wycomico County Council and Acting County Executive hereby proclaim September 25th, 2022 as World Rivers Day in Wycomico County. Encourage all citizens to celebrate our local rivers and tributaries on this day, September 20th, 2022. So, by the way, obviously, Wycomico County, our river is extraordinarily important. We are, I believe, the second largest port in the state, comparatively by tonnage or what goes through there. I think I've heard stats. It's really important, not just, of course, for transport, but obviously for the health of the river. I'm a very proud environmentalist on that side. So, go World Rivers Day.
Josh is getting so fun.
We'll Photoshop somebody in.
Thank you, Josh. Ms. Hurley, good morning.
Good morning, Council President, council members, ladies and gentlemen. The first item on the agenda this morning is a public hearing on resolution number 118-2022. This is authorizing the Acton County Executive to reallocate the CARES Act funding grant for construction of a combined ARF/SRE building, construction of a new fuel farm facility, and to remove the automated parking system as a CARES Act disbursement, and to amend the fiscal year 2023 capital budget and fiscal years 2023 through 2027 capital improvement plan to authorize the funding changes. A public hearing notice was published on the county's website and in the local newspaper, and council had a work session on this request on September the 6th.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley. This time we open the floor for public hearing on resolution number 118-2022. If you have any comments you'd like to make in reference to this resolution, come to the podium, please. State your name, your county of residence, and your concerns. That concludes the public hearing for resolution 118-2022. Entertain a motion from council to approve resolution 118-2022.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
And discussion. I know we have Mr. Tony Rudy here. Anybody have any questions? Would you like to just give us an overview for the public as well?
Please.
Good morning, Tony Rudy, Airport Manager. So basically there is, as you're aware, we had the CARES funding, original CARES funding grant come through, and we identified some very important projects that the airport needs to do. Since that time, a little over 2 years ago, a few things have changed. One is we received bids for our aircraft rescue firefighting building, which were very high. Once we received those bids, we realized we couldn't afford to build that building and our much-needed snow removal equipment building and maintenance building. So we decided to combine those two projects together, have a cost savings, and be able to actually build these much-needed projects. Second thing is the fuel farm. We've identified that in the FY23 adopted budget already. This is simply modifying the funding allocation to go forward with that. And then the parking lot automated attendance system, we already have paid for that with other funding once we found out it was not eligible under CARES.
Mr. Rudy, sometime in the future, I foresee the ARF program outgrowing the current build or the new building that is being built for it. If you look at ARF programs like at BWI and other airports, they've grown a lot.
I would argue no, it won't. We're what they call an Index B airport, and the requirements for that are one truck to respond. Obviously, we have two trucks, one as a backup in case it goes down. To elevate to an Index C airport, the size aircraft that would be needed are rather large, and I don't think in my lifetime it'd be great if we did see traffic like that, but we're talking a rather large aircraft, so if something was drastically to change, we could still facilitate that, I think, in that building.
Questions? Josh?
Just a quick comment on the, I did fly out of the airport again. I'm keeping check on you by regularly traveling. Now, the lighting is one thing I think you do. I saw a couple people that were waiting to try to get out at the ticket system here at the automated parking, and they couldn't see their tickets very well, and they couldn't. So, is there anything we can do to improve lighting out there in the parking lot in that area? That's something to wanted to send your way, so I might as well tell you now.
I appreciate that comment, and we are looking to put in our budget for next year kind of an awning that covers the exit area to shelter it a little bit from the weather, and we can incorporate lighting in that.
That's good.
Those in favor of resolution 118, 2022, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried, resolution passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rudy.
Next is Resolution Number 119, 2022. This is declaring that Granger and McGee, PA, is eligible to receive Maryland State Enterprise Zone benefits for property located at 145 East Carroll Street, Salisbury, Maryland. In order for a business to qualify for Enterprise Zone benefits, it must meet one of the two specific statutory requirements, which are that the business must either make an investment in capital improvements of more than $50,000 or hire new employees since it's been located in the zone. Granger and McGee is eligible for the Enterprise Zone benefits because of their investment of more than $50,000 in the property. And we have Laura Soper here, the Enterprise Zone Coordinator, if you have any questions.
Entertain a motion from council to approve Resolution 119-2022.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 119-2022, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried, resolution passes. Thank you, Mrs. Soper.
Next for your consideration is Resolution Number 120-2022. This is amending the fiscal year 2023 budget position control document, which is attached as Exhibit F to the budget bill. This is to allow for an additional full-time senior department finance specialist position in the sheriff's office. And we have Major Todd Richardson, if there are any questions.
Entertain a motion from council to approve Resolution Number 120-2020.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? We've had a session on this independently.
We did.
Yes. All those in favor of Resolution 120-2022, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried, resolution passes. Thank you, Major Richardson.
Okay, the
Did
next
you have any comments you wanted to make, Major?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Two.
The next item for business is Resolution Number 121-2022. This is the bond resolution. You'll notice that there are two bond series, a Series A and a Series B. Series A is in the amount of $15,089,818, which is tax exempt, and the projects are shown on page 4 of the bond resolution. And Series B is in the amount of $8,288,568. This is taxable, and the projects are shown on page 6 of the bond resolution. And we have Mrs. Pam Olin here, Director of Finance, if there are any questions.
Entertain a motion to approve Resolution 121-2022.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion, Ms. Owen, if you could, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So this is the next step in the process to be able to issue our 2023, fiscal year 2023, fall 2022 bonds. There is two series. There is a tax exempt, which, and a taxable. The reason why there's taxable, and there was taxable last year, is there is a requirement per the IRS as to how much is allowed to be in a tax-exempt bond that is used by taxable entities. Well, most everything out at the airport, even though we own it, is used by taxable entities. So the runway, the car wash facility is going to be used by car wash companies, which are taxable entities. So the size of that bonding is too large to be able to be included in the tax exempt and not violate IRS regulations. That's why there are two series. And that's the same reason why last year we also split apart the series. We did look with our financial advisors. There is not any bonds right now that we have that are worth refunding. We're not going to save enough money and that's why this year there aren't any refunding bonds listed in anything.
Questions? The CIP was talking about originally, and I know it's a planning document, but it originally planned on funding about $26.6 million, as well as several million in PAYGO funding. Any particular reason for it would be good news. Any reason why we're bonding about $3 million less?
Well,
Just in the bond alone.
I would have to go back and look at
Sure.
as to which projects ended up ultimately getting moved, but this number ties to the capital budget that council approved in June. So I would have to actually go line by line, and I don't remember honestly.
I always don't put the apples and oranges together between the CIP and the actual budget itself. I was just curious. I noticed that these same projects were mentioned for a higher amount, so that's why I thought I'd ask. And I didn't know what we were doing with the 6 million in PAYGO. Probably an email would be just as easy.
Okay, I think if I remember correctly, I think the ultimate decision was that with some of the funding, with some of the fund balance that we had available to us, let's pull a couple things out of bond. Instead of making it a 20-year bond that we're paying interest on, let's use fund balance. But I would have to, I don't remember which projects that was, sorry.
What are we anticipating with the new interest rates going through the roof? Is that changing a lot of the dynamics of the CIP and, how aggressive we're going to be, or we're going to be pulling back some? PAYGO or bonding? Well, bonding most of all, but.
So when I first came to council, I think in like the fall of 2020, we knew that like fiscal 22 and fiscal 23 were going to be kind of our big bond years, and that we had identified those and let council know at that point in time, and expected to have to, pull back after fiscal 23. We have put the requests out to department heads for our fiscal 24 and forward CIP to start that process. So I don't have a concept yet of the magnitude, but I do have last year's, numbers that we anticipated, and we knew that based on our debt limit and the amount that we were going for over the last 2 years, that we expected those numbers to come down. So even without the economy aspect of interest rates, we already knew that 24 and forward were going to have to be a little bit leaner in the amounts that we were looking at. So we're taking that into consideration. We're also taking into consideration the fund balance that we have and how to best utilize that, and would that be the best way to do that for the next fiscal year, to consider that as our main funding source versus bonding.
You mean the PAYGO?
Yeah.
I know we've suggested this before, but it's kind of, the way the CIP works is, I wouldn't say it's confusing, but we always approve a CIP, and yet, honestly, another year would go by and a new CIP comes out for the next year, and you really have to cross-reference to find out what was dropped and what wasn't dropped. And I think a request had been made so that the administration could give us some idea of how the CIP and the current projects were being fulfilled, especially in that one calendar year, let's say fiscal 23, and if we decided to drop, $6 million worth of projects or move them into the next year, it'd be nice to sort of keep the council in tune with what's going on as it progresses. Does that make sense to you? Especially now.
Yeah. The CIP document itself would become really, really voluminous if we continued to show the projects that we're not asking for new funding for in the document. Could we look at providing council an update as to, here are the past projects that have been approved, funded, moving forward status? We could look at that aspect. I'm not sure combining that in the CIP would make it any clearer of a document.
No, yeah, and I get it. I get it. I wouldn't want that either. But, in the preface of the CIP, you talk about the general obligation, indebtedness, et cetera. You have about a full page of exactly what obligations the county has. It'd be really good. That might be the place to put it, where you could announce not only new projects, but the project that have gone by the wayside. I'll give you an example.
Let me look at that and how to best, how I think can relay the information. And let me hear your example.
I was just going to say Barron Creek kind of like just dropped off the face of the earth, and it was like, council looked back and go, where was it? What happened there? And it'd be really nice to just have those bit of an updates, because we don't do this 24/7,
I will look and see if I can figure out a way to make it a little clearer, or at least keep you updated on the projects that have shifted
Yeah,
in the system.
no great detail,
Okay,
at least from my perspective. Joe?
Good morning, how are you?
good.
Good. Did we have any bonds mature, that was paid off this past year? And how much approximately?
I don't remember, but I can look. I believe we've obviously paid debt, but I don't think we had any that, part of the reason why we felt that 24, 25 were going to be lean years is that we had some drop off in 2021, and we weren't having a lot drop off in this period of time, and we were planning to bond significantly. I think it was the next set, if I remember, was like 25, 26 is when we have a significant drop. And again, that goes with the discussion we had a couple years ago, why we figured 24, 25 were going to have to be lean years in the amounts that we borrow.
We hope we remember that.
I don't think Pam will forget.
Thanks for coming in. I just had a question on the different department bonds with Warwick Community College and the Board of Education. If the amount that we bond, and there is, I mean, I don't anticipate this happening moving forward, but I know it's happened in the past. If there is a balance on those bonds, does that stay in Warwick's coffers and the Board of Education coffer, or they return that back to the county?
So the money does not get released to them until they actually submit invoices. So the money is actually held by the county. Okay. So we don't release, we borrow $5 million. We don't send them $5 million to manage. They have to submit invoices to us showing that they've spent $5 million, and then they get that money.
Has that always been the case?
Mm-hmm. At least as far as I am aware. But so since we are the holder of the bond, we have to show that the money was actually spent. So the only way to show it's spent is we get the receipts showing. And so on about a monthly basis, we get a submittal from the Board of Education is the biggest one because they have so many projects in comparison to Warwick. Warwick is not quite monthly, but the Board of Education about monthly will send us a list of all the capital projects that they have worked on, show us what they've spent, which projects they are, and what they're asking for reimbursement for. So it is kind of like a reimbursement grant.
Great, okay. All right, thank you.
Joe?
Pam, could you get at sometime, could you put a list together of what bonds do mature in the next 2 or 3 years for us?
I can. I also know in the back of the audit, it shows in one of the footnotes, it actually shows the maturity dates in the back. So if you take the fiscal 21 audit, I don't have the page number memorized.
You don't?
No. I could probably flip to it pretty quickly, but
maybe Laura can look it up for us. Yeah.
So
okay, that's fine.
It is in the back of the audit. It shows, it's kind of one of those ones that opens kind of 2 pages.
Okay.
And it shows what we have outstanding that's general obligation, and it shows the original issuance, the issuance date, the amount that, or the date that it matures, and how much is remaining, if I'm remembering the schedule correctly.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Very informative.
I just
Yes.
have one quick. When is the bond sale?
So the bond sale, I need to pull a calendar because I'm going to say the wrong date. So we are meeting with the analysts next Tuesday. So that is the rating, we meet with the rating agencies next Tuesday. And then the sale is intended to be the October 18th, which is a council meeting. Like last year, we're asking council to have their morning session and then be available for an afternoon session to be able to set the rates. Like we, come back into session and set the rates so that we can accept, because we have to, per New York, basically set the rates or, accept our bids, go through some process, make sure, and then we have to come to council with a resolution to set the rates. So we are looking for kind of that split session like we had last year. And we figured it meets the ones who are issuing the bonds better if we do it on a daytime one so that it's accepted before 5 p.m.
Questions? All right, thank you. All those in favor of Resolution 121, 2022, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Resolution passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley. This time we open the floor for public comments. If you have any comments that you'd like to make in general, come to the podium, please. State your name, your county of residence, and your concerns.
I want to give a copy of my statement to council, just because I think that.
Thank you so much.
It has some information that might be good to keep on mind. My name is Pamela Olszewski. I've met with you before. I live on Porter Mill Road, about a half a mile from the Porter Mill DAF tank in Hebron. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today before the public hearing on DAF storage legislation on October 4th. But today I'd like to speak to you an issue I am very concerned about regarding the county's prohibition bill, which had its first reading on September 6th. Section E, as it is written, will allow the very things the residents, us residents of Porter Mill Road have abdicated against for the past 3 years. We've been working on this for 3 years now. It will allow a farmer or farming business, both undefined, anywhere in the A1 zone to construct any kind of DAF storage. That's what we have. It will allow DAF storage even on land that's not owned by said farmer or business. The land can be leased. The DAF can be imported, simply stored there, and exported. The E3 provision is not clear and in fact is very confusing. I had to read it several times to go, no, I don't think this is straightforward. It appears storage can occur without any restrictions, without any public notification or hearing, and without special exemption. What it does is codify without ambiguity exactly what we're living with on Porter Mill Road. For that reason, the bill is not a prohibition. It's not. Also of concern are the whereas clauses. In one place, the storage is cited as open-top storage. Everywhere else, the language mentions open-top storage tanks. So there is a difference here. It even states in the definition of open-top storage tanks that they're above ground. And we know that doesn't cover all of the storage. NAG, our Neighborhood Action Group, has repeatedly argued against the definition because it leaves the door open for lagoon storage. The Planning and Zoning Department raised this very concern with the Planning Commission, and they were careful to eliminate the loophole. Any prohibition bill must be amended to define DAF, as we call it, DAF, to define it in open storage, not open storage tanks, open storage, period. As much as I'd like to be for a prohibition bill, would I? This is not the bill I can support. Please amend it accordingly before the October 4th hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name's David Kenny. I live a quarter mile from the open-top storage tank on Porter Mill Road in Hebron. We've come a long ways. We're getting close, hopefully, to a prohibition bill, and we need to refine the bill that you have introduced for the county. My problem with the prohibition bill has to do with the definition of DAF and where it originates. All it says in E1B is that the liquid organic fertilizer or soil amendment is produced from poultry or other animal processing residuals via a dissolved air flotation process. What about the putrid mess coming from Valley Proteins, the company that was just assessed over $1 million for its wastewater discharge permit violations? And they have been using the cow slurry tank that sometimes is used for DAF to store some of the water in that they're not allowed to no longer dump in the river. As has been well documented by Biff Burns, the majority of the DAF going into the tank on Porter Mill is from Valley Protein. That's a rendering plant, not a processing plant. Is this just an oversight to not include rendering byproducts? Rendering must be included as a source where DAF is produced for storage. If this is not included, I cannot support your prohibition bill. Also, I really have an issue with the definition of DAF as a liquid organic fertilizer or soil amendment. When we at first called it a fertilizer, we were soundly corrected. Oh no, we were told it's a soil amendment. Your definition is confusing at best. Is DAF a fertilizer or is it a soil amendment? The draft legislation which NAG sent to you on August 31st offers a well thought out definition. It is narrower and more precisely focused on DAF than what the county's provision is. The MDA, Maryland Department of Agriculture, is the governing department when DAF is applied to the fields. We're not questioning that at all and never have. As we've said from the beginning, there are two separate issues, application and storage. The only problem we are trying to resolve is how and where massive quantities of DAF may be stored. The county has total authority under state and county law to regulate storage. MDA has repeatedly told us that transportation and storage of DAF is regulated by local jurisdictions. The subsequent use of DAF is completely irrelevant. This is a waste management issue, not an agricultural issue. I suggest that you use DAF's definition of DAF, NAG's definition of DAF, to avoid future conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny.
Good morning, Lynette Kenny, Porter Mill Road. And on September 6th, the morning of September 6th, I heard something on the radio. And in fact, it was so profound to me that I wrote it down. It said the difference between empathy and judgmentalism is the backstory. And I've been mulling that over in my mind the past 2 weeks, thinking, why do certain groups have such an animosity towards NAG and our supporters? And it's because they don't know the backstory. They don't know what we've lived with. They don't know our concerns when we get in the car and travel down the roads. They don't know how our lives have changed. They just don't know the backstory. And I also got to thinking, what about them? Why are they so concerned? They've got a different perspective on this. And I know part of that answer is because of their backstory and what they have had to deal with a couple of the situations in the past. And so I can understand where a lot of their fear is coming from. I do understand their perspective. And to me, it's a little bit like getting bit by a dog. If you get bit by a dog once, you're scared. If you get bit by a dog, you just probably don't want to come anywhere near a dog. And that's what's happened to these folks. But we all know that all dogs are not to be feared, and that some of us even have dogs as our best friends, and they have even saved lives. So let's not lump everybody in as bad dogs. Consider each situation by its backstory, and don't lump us and our supporters in with the dogs who bite. I want to commend Councilman Nicole Ackley. This mess has been dumped in her lap from the first 2 weeks since she started sitting on the council. And honestly, she has walked a very shaky tightrope in trying to reach out to both sides. And she's done a good job of reaching out to us, the neighbors, and as well as to Biff. And she has kept that dialogue going and tried to find some sort of a resolution to this business that affects us now and also going forward. So we really appreciate that. And also, Councilman Hastings, you said something last week that, or 2 weeks ago, that really struck me. You said we have got to get this right. And I totally, wholeheartedly agree. So my concern that I would like to speak to you this morning is with the right to farm arguments that we've heard. And did you know that the best we've been able to establish, the Porter Mill tank, is the very first one to be permitted specifically to store DAF? We've looked in the Upper Shore, we've looked into Delaware, and we can't find anything else that has been permitted to store, specifically to store DAF in this manner. All the other tanks, which have been heralded as a reason that is usual and customary, are dairy slurry tanks that have been converted to storing DAF after the dairy went out of business. And these dairy slurry tanks in Maryland were mandated by the state and permitted as such. The product that was stored in them was produced on the farm, and by and large, it was used on the farm as manure for their own farms. NAG has never objected to those conversions. I just want you to know that. If there was a process followed to approve the switch from storing carried slurry to DAF produced in the processing and rendering plants, it does not appear to be in the public record. It is not clear what the legal basis for this change would have been. It is a far stretch, then, to consider permitting new tanks to store DAF as usual and customary. The argument planning and zoning has always used that they don't consider what's in the tank, but rather the construction of the tank is disingenuous. And the question still remains, what is in the tank? We know that the same waste product is currently being sent to Bioenergy DevCo by Purdue to be used as a component in soil composting, and soon, I hope, in their new digesters, anaerobic digesters. However, the DAF is not being repurposed while it's just sitting in the tank. It continues to rot and stink and to make our lives miserable at times. Another issue I want to address is this idea that we will be going after the chicken houses and the manure barns next. When I first heard that, I had to laugh because it is so far out there. We have repeatedly, and you know this, from the very first time that we spoke before, you said that we support agriculture and did not want to hurt the farmer or the industry. Our legal advisors carefully crafted the bill that NAG sent to you on August 31st. I asked that you put it on the agenda for consideration along with the other 3 bills which you did consider. And if you read the bill, you could see that the definition of DAF is clearly spelled out, and the bill was written to narrowly limit the prohibition to open DAF storage only and period. No chicken houses, no manure barns, no unintended consequences down the road. Your prohibition bill, however, has horrible consequences for those of us who live in the A1 or near the A1 zone. Also, the 2 environmental groups who have been supporting us have done their homework. Rather than being total naysayers, they have written op-ed pieces in support of Bioenergy DevCo. They've traveled to Georgetown to speak publicly for the project, and they have toured the facility about 1.5 years ago. They are one of the greatest proponents of the sustainable processing of DAF, saying that all of our groups, NAG, WET, and Friends of the Nanticoke, have a backdoor interest in closing down the poultry industry on the shore. It's fear-mongering, which pits well-meaning people against well-meaning people. The Farm Bureau supports our position, and we need to stop these shenanigans now. Please don't allow the smoke and mirrors to confuse you on who the real party and interest is. Follow the money. I've always heard that said, follow the money, and it will lead you to a lucrative and commercial trucking and waste management business. Treat it as such. Amend your prohibition bill to protect your citizens as well as our farmers and the poultry industry on the shore. Thank you.
Sandy?
I'm Carol Donahue from Whitehaven, and I've spoken to you repeatedly on behalf of the Wycomico Environmental Trust and Friends of the Nanticoke River, and we remain very much engaged in this and hopeful that it will all be resolved satisfactorily at the next meeting. I'm sure that you all are tired of hearing about this also. The bill that the council voted on last time is termed a prohibition bill, but as has been noted by the NAG members this morning, it doesn't operate like a prohibition bill. It contains this very broad exception for anyone who is considered a farmer or a farming business, and those terms are not defined. You know, the bill chose not to use terms that are already defined, and so who knows what a farming business is. And it allows DAF waste to be imported into this county, stored for as long as the host would like, and then re-exported to land that the farming business or the farmer uses someplace else. It's a huge loophole. The definition in that bill has other issues, including, you know, the raising questions about whether it actually covers the DAF waste that we've been talking about for 3 years. You've got a list that was provided by NAG in advance of your last meeting that notes the drafting issues with that bill. They may have been unintentional. We understand that there are efforts underway to try to improve the drafting, but we don't know whether they'll work. And what we're hearing now is that we'll find out on October 4th. All I want to say is I think it's time to separate fact from fiction here. And for the council to step up and have a straight vote on this. You've had a supermajority vote twice to support meaningful regulation of where this waste is stored, to protect the county's residents. And Mrs. Kinney is quite right to point out that it was actually the environmental groups that first proposed the narrower exception to target only DAF. We're not opposed to farming. We're not opposed to the poultry industry. As I've said to you before, my father was even president of DPI for some time as I was growing up here. It's not fair to say, oh, they must really be wanting something else. The only people who've proposed an overbroad definition of the material to be regulated are the Planning and Zoning Department. And so, I think that speaks volumes. I do hope that when you meet next time, that the process will be managed in a way that allows the supermajority on this council to actually vote for a bill that works. I, for one, would hate to have to do another documentary or something. And I would hope that wouldn't be required either by the passage of an inadequate bill that actually doesn't work or by a delay until after the election. We've all agreed in principle that no further delay is needed, but we stand ready to continue our engagement if it really is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Donahue.
Good morning. My name is Michael Brenner, and I'm from Wycomico County originally. My family resides in Wycomico County, but I now live in Baltimore County. On Thursday, July 28th, while I was walking my 14-month-old dog up my family's driveway to our mailbox, a pit bull appeared at large in the road and viciously mauled my dog, Charlie. I would later learn that 3 hours before we started our walk, a neighbor that lives a few streets away had just adopted a 5-year-old pit bull from the Humane Society named Brick. About an hour before we started our walk, Brick had gotten loose from his new owners inside their home, a couple in their 70s, and had made his way towards our home off of Pine Bluff Road. For the sake of time, I'll spare you from the gruesome details of the bloody attack. Brick wanted to kill my dog. There was little I could do to stop it. After about 2 minutes of hell, I finally was able to separate Brick's teeth from my dog for just enough time for my dog to escape and run home. I held on to Brick and I called 911. 30 minutes later, Animal Control Officer Geyer arrived and immediately recognized Brick as a dog he and his wife had regularly walked at the Humane Society. My dog was covered in open wounds. We ended up taking her to Pets ER for extensive emergency surgery. We're now on week 7 of her recovery, and she's thankfully doing great. I should note that Pets ER is an absolute godsend for this community. After the attack, I was told by both Officer Geyer and the next day by Executive Director Knock that during the 20 months that Brick was in the custody of the Humane Society, he'd initiated multiple attacks against other dogs, and that he was known to be aggressive. The term aggressive is not legally defined, so it doesn't require any safety controls to be put in place. However, our county's code does define the terms dangerous and potentially dangerous to similarly label, well, dangerous animals. And once labeled, the code requires that the owner and any future owners put in place a variety of safety controls to prevent attacks like the one we experienced. Coincidentally, 1 week before the attack, that same animal control officer, Director Knock, and the county's attorney appeared before you to propose some updates to our animal control regs. A councilwoman asked for the definition and difference between the terms dangerous and potentially dangerous. Officer Geyer provided his interpretation, which is different from what our county's code and embedded state law defines. In particular, he left out an essential condition that satisfies the test of dangerousness. That is, if an animal simply attacks without provocation. In the case of Brick, there was a known history of him attacking without provocation while in the custody of the Humane Society. When I later asked Officer Geyer about this, he said a dog can't be deemed dangerous while at the Humane Society because it only applies to dogs that are not on their own property. This is objectively false, and it makes me question what other dogs are being incorrectly excluded from their proper labeling. Because of Brick's aggressive behavior, the Humane Society kept him isolated from other dogs, and they had recently started training him to wear a muzzle, but they never completed that training before recommending that he would be an excellent fit for our neighbor down the street. They didn't require that the new owners make any modifications to their home, which looks quite different than a fenced-in animal shelter. A muzzle was suggested to the new owner, but it wasn't required. And had they appropriately deemed him dangerous, a muzzle would have been required. Since this council is currently discussing changes to our animal control regs that have been proposed by the Humane Society, Charlie and I would like to also call your attention to 4 practical ways to improve these services. So number 1, we recommend this council investigate and ensure that dangerous animals are being deemed so appropriately based on the conditions defined by law, especially for animals that are housed at the Humane Society. Hypothetically, if an animal is in the custody of the Humane Society and it's deemed dangerous, then that label might lower its chance of being adopted out, but which would negatively affect the director's publicly stated personal goal of having the Humane Society reach a no-kill status. For that reason, I recommend this council also find a way to remove this inherent conflict of interest so this nonprofit doesn't have to choose between its own no-kill mission and the animal control and public safety services our county contracts them to perform. Number 2, the county's contract with the Humane Society for Animal Control Services was executed in August 1981, and it hasn't been updated since. I recommend that this council review that contract, as well as the county's $368,000 annual expenditure for these services, and see how that money is being spent. In my own unprofessional review of the Humane Society's budget, there appeared to be a significant surplus from the county's fee in the Humane Society's favor based on their accounting for animal control services. Number 3, Chapter 133 of the County Code, titled Animal Control, has embedded the state's own laws related to dangerous animals, Article 3. Those overlap and conflict with the county's own code about dangerous dogs, Article 4. So the council actually noted this potential confusion at an open work session in June 2018, but it doesn't look like it clarified the differences before the bill passed in September. Therefore, we recommend reviewing those articles and hopefully aligning with or enhancing the state's text on dangerous animals. And finally, pursuant to federal and now state mandates, we recommend that this council direct animal control to adopt its own policy of proactive disclosure. Ideally, it should post all dangerous animal data to a public website, similar to a sex offender registry. It turns out that the county code already requires animal control to publish impounded dog data to a public website. However, they've never actually done this. So in addition to satisfying that existing requirement, we recommend we follow in Anne Arundel County's footsteps and publish our dangerous dog data as a matter of public safety. I attempted to get dangerous dog data through PIA requests, but my requests were denied because I was told that Animal Control's filing system doesn't, quote, have a function to delineate dangerous dogs from other events. I actually reached out to Shelter Buddy. They're the software vendor that the Humane Society and Animal Control uses for their filing system, and they confirmed that their software can, in fact, delineate these type of events, and it can publish this data online in real time. So where there's a will, there's a way. Charlie and I thank you for your time.
Mr. Brenner, just for your information, we do have a work session coming up a little later, scheduled a little before lunch. Not sure if it's going to end up after lunch, but just so you were aware that we were addressing that subject today, and legal is here to look at the information you've supplied as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, council comments. Very good. Under presidential comments, just to let everyone know that the health department's moving forward so well and successfully with the Wycomico Goes Purple theme. We've had about 4 events already during August. September 28th, Tony Hoffman will be at Warwick Community College at 5 o'clock. I would recommend that you attend that. It's very informative. It's a very good. It should be a very good event. And then the last event is September 30th. It's a Night of Hope at the Salisbury City Park. That's also a very enjoyable evening as well. But they've done excellent work. They've been at Shorebird Stadium. They've been at Winter Place Park. They've been everywhere throughout the county to try to promote it. And you would be surprised to see just how many people are in attendance. At one event at Winter Place Park, they had 30 vendors that were there to support individuals with opioid abuse issues. And hundreds of people came out to visit the vendors, to look at the program, to hear the speeches for the day. So it's being received very well, and there are a lot of people who are out there looking for assistance, looking for help, who are attending these events. So I think it's been very successful, and I'm glad to see it. On one other point, applications are now available online in reference to the Fallen Heroes bill that we recently passed. This is the bill that would give available property tax relief for any permanently disabled law enforcement or rescue workers. The deadline is September 30th, so you'd want to quickly get online, find out exactly what you need to do. The application form is supposed to be extremely simple. So we put it out there for a reason, so that people could benefit from it, and we would hope that you would go online and take advantage of that. That being said, entertain a motion to adjourn so that we can go into open work session. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned. First item on the agenda is the discussion of the redesignation of the Salisbury Wycomico Enterprise Zone. Ms. Soper is here as the Director of Business Development for the City of Salisbury. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Council. How's everyone?
Morning.
Doing well, thanks.
Included in your brief book is a resolution to approve the redesignation and expansion of the Enterprise Zone. And to give you guys some background on that program, the Enterprise Zone is a local economic development tool that was established by the Maryland General Assembly, and it gives local governments the authority to offer real property and state income credits for businesses located in the zone for if they create jobs or if they do investments at a property. It was first designated in 1982 and must be redesignated every 10 years. So as such, we are due for our redesignation in December. And that redesignation goes to the Department of Commerce every 10 years. Since the program has been created, we've designated 82 businesses for the benefits. The proposed expansion that we're looking at is in 3 separate areas. The first area is Westwood Commerce Park. There was a parcel that was bisected, so just wanted to clean that up, remove any ambiguity about that property. The second area is the center at Salisbury, And the third is a small commercial park pocket on the south end by Salisbury University off of Milford Street. In order to add these areas, we need to demonstrate that they are in a state designated priority funding area, and they meet the requirements as set forth in Economic Development Article 5-704. These three areas qualify under the criteria of demonstrating that it is a low-income poverty area, and if approved, they would add an additional 142.1 acres to the existing 5,200 acre zone. I'm open to any questions if you have any about the proposed redesignation and expansion.
What was the process for, I guess, for going through expansion? I know, of course, it's the state definition, and then, of course, there's local input. I'm just thinking of the other areas of the county, if they've had a good opportunity, if they understand how important of a tool this is, and if you feel confident that the expansion as is proposed is sufficient.
So when we looked at redesignating the area, I met with County Executive Dave Ryan, and I believe Lori Carter was there, as well as representatives from the mayor's office. And we started looking at different areas where we could see potential growth in the next 10 years or potential change where we'd like to see investment. Some of the areas we identified did not qualify under the criteria that Commerce set forth. So they could not be included. So the three that we did include did qualify. So.
And can this be? I know we're reauthorizing, I guess, every 10 years. It can be updated every, I guess,
Yes.
as needed, right?
Yeah, if we wanted to add someplace at a later date, we could. We did that in 2018 to add the airport. So additions to the zone can be done whenever we'd like, but the redesignation is required every 10 years.
So I had, thanks for coming in. I had just a question to what Mr. Hastings said. So this is for the city of Salisbury, and I guess maybe it's not a question for you, but for our acting county executive, is if the other municipalities were consulted to see if they wanted to be included in this.
Fruitland does have a separate zone.
Okay.
I'm just the administrator for the Salisbury Wycomico. I think the county executive oversees Fruitland. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who
That's
authorizes
okay, yeah.
it. But yes, you could designate other zones in other municipalities as well.
Okay. And then the other question I had for you is, what has been the return on investment with this? Is there any way to measure?
I could certainly look into that. It's difficult to quantify because it depends on, there are two credits under it. There's the state income and the real property. So the real property, we can look at, we are reimbursed 50%, so we can see how much money we're getting back. I would have to dig into the change in assessment on the properties that are qualified for it, so I could look into that for you if you'd like. But the real property credit is based solely on a change in assessment. And that is done on the back end by the Department of Assessments and Taxation.
Okay. So they have to have so many employees, right?
For the state income credit, they have to hire 2 or more full-time employees. So there's 2 paths. They can do the state income credit or the real property credit, or both if they qualify for both. There isn't a threshold for how many employees they have to have at the start. But if they create 2 or more full-time positions, they would qualify for the state income credit.
I would be interested to see how many jobs this has created.
Okay.
I mean, I just think it would be, since that's the part of the economic development is bringing jobs.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something you can easily
certainly
pull. I don't want to put you on a full project, but
I can look into the past applications for how many jobs they said they were going to create.
Okay.
That being said, they can apply before the jobs are created, but they only get the credit when they file their state income taxes. So
Okay.
they have to demonstrate that these jobs have been created.
Okay.
So I wouldn't have access to the state income filings, but I can certainly look at the applications and get you that information.
Thank you.
The qualify to be in this zone, did you say that the area had to be a poverty zone?
In order to add a census tract, it has to demonstrate that it meets 125% of the national poverty level. So certain census tracts in Wycomico would not be eligible for that. But
So initially, when this was set up, the initial enterprise zone, okay, was it under the same, was it supposed?
I believe so. I could try and track down the original application. The guidelines may have changed since the inception of the program, but as it stands, you need to demonstrate that the census tract hits those thresholds.
I mean, it's kind of concerning to see that we've got over 5,000 acres that's considered poverty level.
That
in
may have changed,
Yeah.
but I can look into that.
Yeah.
Isn't that part of what you evaluate when you redefine the enterprise zone, as opposed to just adding on?
I think as long as it's all in the priority funding area, that's the first threshold. And I'm not sure if they were grandfathered in or not, but I can check.
So if it has to go in as a poverty area and then it brings itself out of the poverty area because it's successful, does it still qualify?
I'm not sure, but I can certainly look into that.
Questions? Where would this go from here, Ms. Hurley?
It does require a public hearing, and we can have that on October the 4th at 6 PM.
Will you be presenting the resolution on the same day?
That is
Same day?
correct, yes.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Ms. Sepper.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is the update of the opioid settlement payment. Mr. Illuminati, and well, it looks like only Mr. Illuminati.
Good morning, everyone. Apologize for my voice. Council, end of last year, accepted the settlement with Johnson & Johnson as one and the big three distributors, McKesson, Cardinal Health, and Amerisource as the other settlements. The Attorney General's office, along with numerous parties to the litigation within Maryland, then formed an agreement to distribute the funds from the settlement. It looks like that agreement is finally, the payment of those funds is going to be made. So under the agreement, the total from those four would be $128,281 to the county. Then there would be an additional $3.3 million potential grant money available. So Wycomico County would be able to then apply for that money on top with a cap of $115,000. So in total, now the grant applications, those have not been established yet. With just looking at everything with the Attorney General leaving and being replaced this year, I don't anticipate the grant work being available until at least the new administration. But the guaranteed funds should be available by the end of next month is the anticipation. The county had already set up the account to receive the funds. We've done everything the Attorney General's asked us to comply with in order to receive payment. So once that payment's received, the money needs to be spent on abatement, and I believe we'll get more information exactly how broad of a term that is. Then there is pending litigation with some small manufacturers, but primarily the retail pharmacies. That's CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, and those lawsuits are beginning to go to trial throughout the country. Ohio had recently tried one and had received a very successful verdict. So the belief of outside counsel is that there will be sort of another massive settlement agreement like with the big three distributors in Johnson & Johnson, which will be an additional source of abatement revenue. The two biggest questions going forward is originally Baltimore City had opted out of this settlement with Johnson & Johnson, the big three. would Baltimore City look at joining the settlement, which would then raise the guaranteed money payable to the county as well as the other counties? And then the other option is with a new attorney general, would the same settlement style with the that was done with the manufacturers be done with the retail pharmacies, or would there be something else? There was a lot of pushback from the counties that more money should be coming to those who are affected rather than applying for the grant process. Probably the success of the grant process is going to determine whether there's a new MOU or not for the retail pharmacy litigation.
Mr. Illuminati.
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. What was the figure, the settlement for the county? 100?
The first year total payment guarantee is a little over 128,000. The total guarantee over, there were two different timelines, but the max timeline was 18 years, is over $1.8 million.
Okay, that's different. Now, with that said, is that the county's allotment, or does it have to be split up with municipalities?
That's the county's allotment. So the county will be able to use for abatement. Then the county can also apply for the grants to increase that number. But the guarantee over the 18 years is 1.8.
And do you know what the share is for the municipalities?
The only municipality subject to the litigation was Salisbury, and they'll have their own guaranteed amount. Unfortunately, the other municipalities were below the threshold number, so the county is going to have to make a decision. Is a percentage that's going to go to Fruitland, to Pittsville, to Sharptown, or is it just going to be a county-wide effort through the health department? That's something that will be left to council.
Another work session. Thank you.
Yes.
Josh?
So to be, for clarity, does the state hold the grant amount? Is that what you're saying? Or is this in a separate fund set up through the big three and others? What to apply for the grant funds, who holds those funds?
The state holds the funds.
Okay, and that is a period of, and you mentioned 18 years for total, if guaranteed. How many years would we have of theoretically applying for the grant funds?
Up to the 18, it was, so the total settlement was over a course of 18 years with that figure. So the grant money would be there every year.
Then I guess the abatement part, whatever, we don't have any guidance from the state, just for clarity.
Nothing, sort of like with the ARPA money, it's this broad category of abatement. Could it be, direct to the public in some sort of public outreach, or can it also be used for sheriff's office vehicles for proactive enforcement? It's really unknown at this point. We need better guidance.